Hazard pay heats up next week as we finally find out the Republicans' answer to the proposal. Hey everybody, this is LALATE with a second stimulus check and stimulus package update for today. This one's about hazard pay, that $10,000 from the federal government that's proposed in the HEROES Act, which is currently in the Senate from the House and will come up for a vote in late July. As you know, this coming Monday is the great debut tour of Mitch Onse, that bill that Stevie Mnuchin and Mitch McConnell have been proposing and writing for weeks, which will ultimately become the Republican second stimulus package. It will be debuted to press in a road show that will likely be unveiled this coming Monday, if not Tuesday or Wednesday, in which we'll learn whether or not they have hazard pay in the bill. This channel has been really detailing the nuances of hazard pay, the silence from the Republicans about hazard pay, and the future of hazard pay. But today I have breaking news about really what's going on some local levels and how there might be new types of jobs for you that you might consider. First, hazard pay implies both a state hazard pay, local hazard pay, and a federal hazard pay. When we talk about the hazard pay bill, we're talking about the federal law. The federal law proposes to give $10,000 to people who are essential workers defined under the hazard pay bill that worked or are working during the pandemic. You can be self-employed, you can be independent contractors, you can be public employees, or you can be private employees. The way it's calculated is the number of hours you worked during the pandemic, starting in January up to the present going forward, times $13 an hour. Pretty easy. You include both overtime and regular time hours. You calculate that number, see where it lands. If it lands over $10,000, great. This is how it works. The bill proposes to give you a lump sum of $10,000 if you made less than $100,000 last year, and to pay that lump sum right away. If you have a threshold, if you currently have a threshold of less than that, maybe like $8,000, it would pay the $8,000, and then going forward would pay the remainder of the hourly rate on your new job hours going forward in the pandemic until you reach $10,000. Next, if you made a lot of money last year, if you made over $100,000, I'm just saying that's what the bill says, not my proposal, not my interpretation of what's a lot of money or a little bit of money. If you made over $100,000 last year, the bill proposes to give you a $5,000 lump sum payment. And if you're not at that threshold, don't worry, any hours you work thereafter would qualify as well. The parts of the bill that are very good is it defines essential workers very clearly in some regards. The part of the bill I don't like are the following. One, it doesn't define essential workers some places very clearly. Those gray areas are people who work at Walmart, Target, Walgreens, CVS, Costco. I don't like it. It's just not clear. The other part of the bill that's really, really not good is that it says that the employer may apply for you, but doesn't have to, and is purely discretionary. Ultimately, employees can get screwed because employers may not apply for them. We've been detailing the importance of this. The Mitt Romney plan, which is a different bill introduced by the Republican Mitt Romney, proposes a hazard pay of almost the same amount of money, a little bit less, but requires the employer to apply for you. They must. Ultimately, all these bills would be discussed together. But what's going on with the Republicans? We don't know. And there's been no leak of the details of Mitch Onse, which is the code name I'm giving it, of when it hits press next week. So we won't know until then if hazard pay is in there. The good news, however, and there's always great news, is that there are state hazard pay bills. And I've been detailing that for you a lot. There's state hazard pay bills, there's local hazard pay bills, and there's city hazard pay bills. Moreover, there's situational hazard pay. Yesterday I detailed that the unions, essentially the grocery union force, is really pushing back on the major grocery chains that are unionized to get a lot of hazard pay money starting to be paid now going forward. They paid it before, but they want to pay it now going forward. So there's a lot of breaking news today that is related to hazard pay. And the one big news report is something you should consider. Ultimately, I want you to be happy with your life and be happy with what you're doing. But some people are worried that they're working in a hazard environment, not getting compensated enough for it, and they're not quite sure whether they want to continue that hazard environment going forward in the pandemic. Well, the new report today reveals that a lot of people who have been laid off are finding a lot of success in working in what is called non-hazardous environments, namely call centers that are paying very good money. Next Rep, which lets people do call center work from their homes, is seeing an incredible number of new workers. Teladoc's virtual health visits jumped 92%. Instacart, which is another Next Rep, has seen their call centers increase 15,000% fold. They detailed a very nice person in this new article today from CNBC that talks about Gary Britton, which took over one of these big call centers, and he says our call volume went through the ceiling. So what's happening? A lot of people are going from they detail in this report. Tamara Gordon, who's a 40-year-old single mom in Atlanta, she was a teacher. She was laid off during the pandemic. She did not want to work in a hazardous environment going forward. So rather than sit back and worry about whether she's getting hazard pay or not, she took a non-hazard job, which is this call centers. And she really likes it. She's also doing Amazon on the side, which I guess is slightly hazardous. She had to take a pay cut, but she says, I was leaving my kids at home at night while going to Amazon. I was super tired during working the day. Oh, I misstated. So she actually did quit Amazon. I really like the flexibility of Next Step. It supplements my teacher's income, which I need to do. So even when she goes back to teaching, she will be able to keep this job, which is non-hazardous. So Teddy Liu, who's Next Rep CDCO, is receiving 7,000 applications a week up from 2,000 per week for people who they are hiring. I mean, this is incredibly great news from people that have jobs. They're adding 4,000 people in just 3 months. How much are they making? They're making, well, here's the salary. You decide whether you think it's good or not. I'm not going to decide for you. Workers typically make between $10 to $25 an hour, averaging $12 to $14 an hour, working from home with their kids and their family around them. You don't have to expose yourself to COVID, and you don't have to commute, says law. These jobs aren't tied to educational attainment, so you can actually keep yourself and your family safe. I mean, so this is really great news. And, if you are working in a hazard pay environment and you still want to stay there, but want to take another job that's not hazardous, this might be the one for you. Next Step does all the due diligence, says it only accepts about 3 to 5% of its employees, but if it take a day off of job right now, I want to make for it, I can always do it. The biggest selling point is I'm able to do it at home and spend more time with my family, says Beekman in the interview. With tens of millions of people out of work, it feels like a great opportunity to take these jobs. So when we're talking about hazard pay, it calculates really quite clearly, but we don't know what the Republicans' position about hazard pay is. We're going to find that out next week. Ultimately, I don't want you to be nervous. If when we start to see the debut of hazard pay as in the Republican plan not there, I don't want you to get nervous. If it's reduced or butchered or just significantly redacted or drawn down, I don't want you to get nervous. These things are negotiable. We really haven't seen a position from the White House about the hazard pay. We've heard nothing from the Republicans about hazard pay. So if it's simply just not there, if it's simply not in Mitch Onse next week, I don't want you to be worried, because that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. The way that these bills work, they have to be approved by both the House and the Senate. And so when there's competing bills, which there will be as of next week, the two stimulus bills are put together and they just debate them together. Here's another twist about hazard pay. It's really, I would never seen this coming. I absolutely would never see this coming. Malls that are facing a lot of big problems, especially if you're in an indoor mall. Like in California, they've now outlawed indoor malls. They've shut them down. Indoor malls, outdoor malls are having a lot of problems because of this pandemic. Some of the places in the malls are essential places of work. Some are not. I mean, going to Guess and getting a nice new watch is not an essential job. But some of these jobs are essential. And so what's happening? Well, a lot of these retail businesses are on the brink of bankruptcy, are in bankruptcy, or about to be bankrupt. And what are mall owners doing? It's a really interesting report. I'm not going to say it's good or bad. I just find it very fascinating. It says that a lot of these mall owners are either giving incredible relief to the businesses to save the jobs, to save the businesses, taking an equity ownership in them, or buying them outright to prevent them from closing and prevent them from losing their jobs. It's really quite fascinating. I think it's the biggest opportunity for the Siemens of the world. They're acting like they're their own private equity firm. They're sitting around on a lot of cash and they're testing the waters, says Scott Seward, a CEO of Turnaround Management Associations. If you don't know, Siemens, did I say Siemens? I meant Simons. Simons is that big outlet. I mean, it's just everywhere. There's like 1,000 of them, just like a few feet from where I am. They're just outlets everywhere from Simons. And apparently a lot of these outlets owners have a lot of cash sitting on them. And so if you're working at these malls, if you're worried about losing your job, if you're worried that you're working perhaps in a hazard essential workers type job at these malls, whether you're shipping the stuff in by truck, you're a truck driver, or you're doing warehouse deliveries for these malls, the great news is that these jobs may be saved. A lot of these businesses, whether it's apparel business like J. Crew, Brooks Brothers, New York and Company, Neiman Marcus, JCPenney, and Stage Shores, and GNC, and Sur La Table, they're all having big financial problems. But the mall owners apparently are trying to alleviate those problems with really fascinating ideas. One of them is an $80 million loan. Another one is an equity investment. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but I think it's starting. We will work together on other distress situations. We're only going to get into companies we think have brands and have volume that is worth it. The view is that these brands need to be preserved, says Brian Cartwick, head of PCW's real estate division. Now is the new normal that better manages financial risk in retail. So really quite interesting. If you work in a mall, or work with something that impacts a mall, like you're delivering to a mall, I want you to be alert that even if you hear your employer on the face of bankruptcy, there's a lot of interesting things that are happening that may ensure that you keep your job, whether it's essential or non-essential. But bottom line is, next week we find out about the fate of hazard pay. What's going to happen with it? We don't know. This will not be ultimately the end of the discussion on it, but we're going to see the Republicans' position on it. And I don't know where it's going to land. I mean, a lot of people ask me on a daily basis, hey, what do you think? What do you think about FPUC? What do you think about rent assistance? What do you think about the stimulus check? How much do you think this is? When they ask me hazard pay, I don't know. I have no leaves to tea leaf. Wait, I just butchered that. If I'm to read the tea leaves, I have no leaves to read. That's what I wanted to say. So ultimately, I have no idea what the Republicans are going to do with this. Maybe they don't know either. What I do believe in my heart, as that plane comes to take me away, because it's time to take me to Kentucky, I think that not providing for essential workers who work during the pandemic, who are working in a hazardous environment, is really, really bad taste. It really is bad taste. There's a couple things that are really not, that you can't swallow. And one of the things I can't swallow is any party, whether it's Republican or Democrat, saying we are not going to compensate people who worked during the pandemic. We're just going to say you had to do that job. Thank you for doing your job. I don't think that's going to work. When the pandemic hit, a lot of people risked their lives. They had very little to protect themselves. They did not get sick, thankfully. Some of them did get sick. And to sit back and say, we're not going to compensate those people an additional sum of money because of what they did or what they continue to do, I don't think it goes down. I don't think I can digest it. I don't know about you. So if the Republicans and the Democrats understand that situation, we may have progress on hazard pay. We really don't know. And as you'll see when I get to the PUA video in a few minutes from now, PUA used to be it used to be an issue of, okay, only a few states are having problems with COVID-19 resurgences. Well, you're going to see in the PUA video that Ohio is apparently the new Florida. That Ohio, which is led by a Republican governor and who freely admits there's a big problem about COVID-19, he's not like the Florida governor. is facing incredible numbers of COVID-19, incredible numbers of unemployment. So here you have a Republican who actually supports stimulus for his citizens. So I don't want you to think broad stroke. I want you to think more in principle. A lot of big developments. If you have questions in today's video, drop them in the comments below and we may answer them in tomorrow's recording. As always, stay positive, stay motivated, stay smiling, stay educated, and as always, stay at LA for more.